I haven't been out of this bed for 20 years, and I'm not getting out of it right now for anybody, said Grandma Josephine firmly. Nor me, said Grandma Georgina. You were out of it just now, every single one of you, said Mr. Wonka. That was floating. That was different. We couldn't help it. We never put our feet on the floor, said Grandma Georgina. Try it. You might surprise yourself. Go on, said Grandpa Joe. Give it a try. I did. It was perfectly easy. We're perfectly comfortable where we are, thank you very much. Mr. Wonka sighed and shook his head very slowly and very sadly. Oh well, he said, so that's that. He laid his head on one side and gazed thoughtfully at the three old people in the bed, and Charlie, watching him very closely, saw those bright little eyes of his beginning to spark and twinkle once again. Ha ha, thought Charlie, what's coming now? I suppose, placing the tip of his nose on one finger, I suppose, because this is an extremely special occasion, I suppose I could just spare you a little bit of... He stopped and shook his head. No, it's pointless. You seem to have decided to stay in that bed whatever happens anyway. And anyway, the stuff is much too precious to waste. I'm so sorry I mentioned it. He started to walk away. Hey, shouted Grandma Georgina, you can't begin with something and then not finish it. What is too precious to waste? Mr. Wonka stopped. Slowly, he turned around. He looked long and hard at the three old people in the bed. They looked back at him, waiting. He kept silent a little longer, allowing their curiosity to grow. The Oompa Loompa stood absolutely still behind them, watching. What is this thing you're talking about? Said Grandma Georgina finally. Get on with it, for heaven's sake, said Grandma Josephine. Very well, I'll tell you. And listen carefully, because this could change your entire lives. It could even change you. I don't want to be changed, shouted Grandma Georgina. May I go on? Thank you. Now, not long ago, I was fiddling about in my inventing room, stirring stuff around and mixing up the things the way I do every afternoon at 4 o'clock, when suddenly I found I had made something that seemed very unusual. This thing I'd made kept changing color as I looked at it, and now and then it kept giving little jumps, as if it were alive. What have we here? I cried, and I rushed to the testing room and quickly gave it to this Oompa Loompa. The result was immediate. It was flabbergasting. It was unbelievable, but it was also rather unfortunate. What happened? What indeed? Said Mr. Wonka. Answer her question, said Grandma Georgina. What happened to the Oompa Loompa? Ah, yes, well, you see, there's no point in crying over spilled milk, is there? Well, you see, I had stumbled upon a very new and tremendous power of might, and I could also knew that if only I could make it safe, if I could only stop it doing to others what it did to that Oompa Loompa. What did it do to that Oompa Loompa? Said Grandma Georgina sternly. The older I get, the deafer I become. Do please raise your voice a trifle next time. Thank you so much. Now then, I simply had to find a way of making this stuff safe so that people could take it without what? Snapped Grandma Georgina. Without a leg to stand on. So I rolled on my sleeves and set to work once more in the inventing room. I mixed and I mixed and I mixed. I must have tried just about every mixture under the moon. By the way, there is a little hole in one of the walls in the inventing room which connects directly with the testing room next door. Let me tell you what happened on that 132nd day of my labors. That morning, drastically, I had changed the mixture, and this time the little pill I produced at the end was not nearly so active or alive as the others. It kept changing color, yes, but only from lemon yellow to blue, then back to yellow again. And when I placed it in the palm of my hand, it didn't jump about like a grasshopper. It only quivered, and then ever so slightly. I ran to the hole in the Oompa Loompa, and I gave it to the Oompa Loompa. He was very old. He was bald, wrinkled, toothless. He was in a wheelchair, and he had been in that wheelchair for at least 15 years. This is test number 132, I said, chucking it up on the board. I handed him the pill. He looked at it a bit nervously. I couldn't really blame him. After what happened to the other 131 volunteers. What had happened to them? Cried Grandma Georgina. Why don't you answer my questions instead of skidding around on two wheels? Who knows the way out of a rose, said Mr. Wonka. So anyways, this brave old Oompa Loompa took the pill, and with the help of a little water, he gulped it down. And then suddenly, the most amazing thing happened. Before my very eyes, queer little changes began taking place in the way he looked. A moment earlier, he had been practically bald, with just a fringe of snowy white hair around the sides of his head. But now, the fringe of white hair was turning gold, and all over the top of his head, new gold hair was beginning to sprout like grass. In less than half a minute, he had grown out a splendid new crop of long golden hair. At the same time, many of his wrinkles started disappearing from his face. Well, not all of them, mind you, but about half, enough to make him look a good deal younger. Teeth were growing up out of those old toothless gums, good old white teeth, and they were coming up so fast I could literally see them getting bigger and bigger. I was too flabbergasted to speak. I just stood there with my head poking through the hole in the wall, staring at the little Oompa Loompa. I saw him slowly lifting himself out of his wheelchair. He tested his legs on the ground. He stood up. He walked a few paces. Then he looked up at me and his face was bright. His eyes were huge and bright as two stars. Look at me, he said softly. I'm walking. It's a miracle. It's Wonkavite, I said. The great rejuvenator. It makes you young again. How old do you feel now? He thought carefully about this question. Then he said, I feel almost exactly how I felt when I was 50 years old. How old were you just now before you took the Wonkavite? 70 last birthday. That means it has made you 20 years younger. It has. I feel as frisky as a frog hopper. Not frisky enough. 50 is still very old. Let's see if I can help you a bit more. Stay right where you are. I'll be back in a twink. I ran back to my workbench and immediately began to make one more pill of Wonkavite using exactly the same mixture. Swallow this, I said, passing the second pill right through the hatch. There was no hesitating this time. He gave a great whoop of joy and started dancing around the room after he had taken the pill, leaping high into the air and coming down onto his toes. Are you happy? I asked him. I'm ectastic, he said. I'm happy as a horse in a hayfield. He ran out of the testing room to show himself off to his family and friends. And thus was Wonkavite invented, said Mr. Wonka. And thus it was made safe for all of us to use. Why don't you use it for yourself, then? You told Charlie you were getting too old to run the factory, so why don't you just take a couple of pills and get 40 years younger? Tell me that. Anyone can ask questions. It's the answers that count. Now then, if the three of you in the bed would care to try a dose. Just 1 minute, said Grandma Josephine, sitting up straight. First, I'd like to take a look at this 70-year-old Oompa Loompa who is now back to 30. Mr. Wonka flicked his fingers. A tiny Oompa Loompa looking young and perky ran forward to the crowd and did a marvelous little dance in front of the three people. 2 weeks ago, he was 70 years old and in a wheelchair, Mr. Wonka said proudly. And now look at him now. The drums, Charlie. Listen, they're starting up again. From far off of the waterfall, the drums were starting up once more. There were 20 Oompa Loompas in the band, each one with an enormous drum twice as tall as themselves. If you are old and have the shakes, if all your bones are full of aches, if you can hardly walk at all, if living drives you up the wall, if you're a grump and full of spite, if you're a human parasite, then what you need is Wonkavite. Your eyes will shine, your hair will glow, your face and skin will start to glow, your rotten teeth will all drop out, and in their place new teeth will sprout. Those rolls of fat around your hips will vanish and your wrinkled lips will get so soft and rosy pink. But wait, for that is not the most important thing of which to boast. Good looks you'll have, we told you so. Each pill, as well, will give you an extra 20 years to live. So come on, old friends, and do what's right. Let's make your lives bright as bright. Let's take a dose of this delight, this heavenly magic dynamite. You can't go wrong, you must go right. It's Willy Wonka's Wonkavite.